When I'm feeling stuck creatively, sketches are one of the first things I reach for. They help me take a story and easily transform it into a layout. My first step is to decide, what do I want to scrapbook? I have these cute outdoor photos of my daughter that I want to scrapbook today, and then I need to go look for a sketch. Now, typically I have not printed my photos yet. I'd be looking at these digitally and then looking through my sketchbooks at the same time. And once I settle on a sketch, that is when I would print my photos. But I'm looking for orientation of photos, also spots that I can easily change. I don't have any landscape photos, but I can repeat the exact same 2 4x6 photos from this side and bring that over onto this side and basically mirror the two. And then I just have a larger spot for my title. Like I often do, I am starting with a clean white base and bringing in the Homemade Sweetness collection. Now, first glance, you might look at this and say this is like full of like little jams and jellies, maybe tell a canning story or a food story. But what caught my eye are the colors. We have some cute little ladybugs and flowers, very outdoorsy. We also have some beautiful flowers, which really caught my eye for this layout. There are some nice solids as well, but I am going to save that for another page. And when I look at my photos, what pops out to me is I have a lot of blue. I have a couple little touches of pink and reddish colors, lots of green, and also brown from her hat. So to me, it makes sense to bring in some wood grain. That is my go-to if I need like a third pattern or something, or just something else to add to my layout. I think just these 2 patterns, one, there's more patterns, more papers indicated here in the sketch than that, but also I feel like I need a third. And so bringing in this wood grain, this is Crumb Cake Wood Grain Wonders. I love how this is not super distressed. So it really matches the vibe of these papers, and it's a pretty close match to her hat. Not identical, but it definitely works. And then we bring in that color from her hat, which is awesome. So those are the patterns I think I want to work with. Now I have to figure out kind of what order I want them to be in. The fun thing about this layout is these 2 patterns are the same size, so I can play with them a little bit and swap them around, see what I like best. If I want this on the outside and kind of have busier to the outside, or maybe flip these and put the busier in the middle. I'm not going to bring in all my photos, but I'm just going to set these in here to see what I think. Okay, let's try moving this and swapping it. I could also do that if I wanted to. But I like the idea of the middle kind of being together. Okay, I think I definitely like the wood grain in the middle better, so let's do that. Now I'm going to bring in my 3x4s since I've decided on how I want my paper. And I'm mostly going with kind of how everything is facing. So these 2 I want together because they're both more like gardening pictures. She's in the garden patch. These are actually from my friend Michelle's backyard. She has a gorgeous backyard, and my daughter loves spending time back there. There's a whole story that goes along with this bird, and I actually texted Michelle to remind me of what that story was because this is from last summer, but I knew there was a story, and she did send it to me, so I'll be able to include that in the journaling. You can see we're definitely going to need some mats here because this just blends right in with the background. And these ones are actually going to be up high. This one's down lower, and they are going to be matted together. Now the pink does seem like a little bit of an outlier because I don't have a ton of pink in here, just little touches of it here and there. It's definitely not a focus, but I still think it works because of the theme, and I can tie it in more with my embellishments once we get to that step. Right, the sketch has another piece that goes along the bottom here. So I've just been looking at this, trying to decide what color I should bring in. I do have Granny Apple Green here. This is the 2-tone cardstock, so one side is dark, one side is light. I love having that flexibility. You can see here's the dark, here's the light. I kind of like the brightness in the light. It matches the grass that are in my photos. Let's just cut that and see what it looks like. Sometimes you can try and picture it all you want, but until you cut the paper, you just can't really decide. I'm not sure I'm a big fan of that. One, it's kind of plain, so I might feel like doing stamping or something on it or embossing it to get some texture. Another option would be to bring in this blue pattern. It's a nice dark color. It would ground this layout, and it has some subtle kind of printed texture on there to give it some interest, like that. I think I like that a lot better than the green. The other option is there is a sticker sheet with this collection. And you can see we do have like some like jars of jam and some spoons and stuff, but there's also florals, some really good wordy bits, some title options in here. And then these are 12-inch long sticker strips. I think if I peel this off, I should be able to stick it back, no problem. Now, if this went with my colors in my photos, I would totally go for this and maybe even do like a thin little border, like maybe a 1/4 inch little strip of that dark blue, but I'm not sure that I really want to do that. Now, keeping in mind, my title has to go down here. So if I'm following the sketch exactly, which you don't have to, right? You can tweak things and make it how you want it. My title is going to be going down here. These are going to be kind of like that, matted there. And then there is some embellishment going on right down here in this area. I'm going to let this decision kind of sit and marinate a little bit. I like to do that. Just kind of move on to something else and then circle back to that decision and see if that's how I want to leave it. But while we're doing that, we need to add photo mats because these photos, see how they just disappear into that pattern paper? They do not pop at all. So I'm thinking white for mats, but let's try it out and see. This is what I like to use my scraps of white for, just when I'm testing it out first before I go and cut a whole bunch, just see how white looks. I have another piece here. Let's put these guys on it because these are also going to be matted. And there are going to be a few spots where they overlap the white where you won't see the white as much. But I think that's what I want to go for instead of bringing in another color. It divides the photos from the background and makes them pop and stand out a little bit, but without adding any extra weight or busyness. So I'm going to go ahead and cut my white mats. While I was attaching everything together, there was a couple things that I decided to add. So first off, I had been debating putting this green under here, but I just didn't like how bright it was. And I know I'm going to mix in this green in my embellishments as well. And so I decided to pull out some garden green. This is a little bit darker, but still in the same tone. And it actually matches the dark areas of the grass and the trees pretty good that are in my photos. So it's not in any of the paper, but it definitely ties into the photos. So I brought in 2 strips down here. And I think this works really good because we have the darker, heavier colors at the bottom, which gives us nice weight down here. If I put that up at the top, it would feel unbalanced, but I think this works a little bit better than the bright green. I also debated ripping it, but then I decided not to. I liked kind of that clean look. But saying that, adding this to the bottom, I feel like something is needed at the top. And you can see, maybe you could see, I have one piece already stuck down here. This is a die, an old one from close to my heart that I have gotten so much use out of, and I love this die. I actually own 2 of them, so I can cut them 2 at a time. But it's just kind of like a doily border. And I debated cutting them in a different color and maybe like making them stand out a little bit more. But I kind of like the tone-on-tone look. I'm thinking if I bend them up a little bit, they'll have a little bit of dimension and they will stand out, at least in person. Maybe not so much on camera, looking top down, but in person I can definitely see the texture. And because of her little hat, and she's wearing her little, skirt and shirt, and it has this lacy detail, I felt like this was just really sweet. Brought some texture to the top without getting too busy. So all I'm going to do to stick these down is add some glue here. If you don't have a similar border to this, you could cut some doilies and cut them in half and create like a little scalloped border. But I think this is a fun little detail to add. So one thing I love about sketches is that they are just a jumping off point. They are not prescriptive. You can really go any way you want. There was nothing in the sketch up here at the top, but I think this really suits my photos. If you haven't grabbed any of the Creative Design Team sketchbooks, all of the volumes are available on our website, cdtcreatives.com. I will link it down below for you. This video is actually part of a collab with the rest of the Creative Design Team using the new Volume 6 sketchbook. So I'll make sure to link the playlist for that in the description and at the end of this video. All right, everything is attached. I tried to leave things not too tightly stuck down in case I want to put things underneath. And speaking of embellishments, I'm bringing in this set. This is the Help Me Grow dies. Had these for a while and haven't had a chance to use them. So I'm not sure if I'm going to use the actual like shovel and the shears and all that, but I'm definitely going to bring in the pot, the greenery. There's some really fun pieces in here. There's also a coordinating stamp set, which these kind of open dies cut out the stamps. But I don't think I'm going to end up using them today. Maybe the little dirt stamp, I might bring that in, but I'm gonna mostly stick with the dies. So I have a little bin of all my goodies here. I've gone ahead and cut some pots from the Wood Grain Wonders, but I used the Pecan Pie color. So this is Crumb Cake here, and I thought I could bring in this brown because I do have a little bit of this warmer brown here in my photo, as well as Lucky, the dog in the background, has this nice warm brown. So I'm thinking that should work. There's also a little tray for the pot to sit in. So I might want to add that. I love how these have slits in them. So you can actually take the greenery, the flowers, whatever you want, and tuck them inside the pot. Same with this little tray. It has a slit, so you can tuck that in, and the pot actually looks like it's sitting in there. Now, the other thing I'm debating is if I want to add ink. I could ink the side of my pot in the coordinating color to add some shading. I could ink kind of in the center of my leaves to add some shading. So that is something I have to think on of what I want to do. I also have some little signs here. So I thought it would be fun to use these little like garden picks, like where you would put what vegetables you're growing or whatever on, and have little sayings, little words that pertain to what's in the photo. Here's one that I've already finished that I actually typed out the words that are going to go on here. So let's go over to the computer and I'll show you how that's done. I'm using Pages because I have a Mac, but you could do the same thing in Word if you have a PC, and I've just added a text box. I need to adjust the size of the box so that my writing isn't going to be too big for my little pick. And so I want to make this just over 1 inch. It's 1 1/8 inch actually. And then I need to make the height about 1/2 inch. I'm going to type bird watching in this one. You could type whatever you want. It just can't be too long because those little picks are pretty small. And then I want to align it to the center. That was the wrong one. I need to go over to text, hit center alignment, and then I want to align the text in the center of the text box so that it's evenly placed in there. And that way I know what it's going to look like when I put it onto my little pick. Now I'm just going to copy and paste that same one. I need to make 3 different ones, so I'm going to just copy and paste so I know that everything is set up the way it needs to be. It's the correct dimensions. And then I'll just type my words in there and line them up at the top of my document. Now it's time to print. Originally, I planned to put it on glossy label paper because I could not find my Avery matte label paper, but I did end up finding it. So the setting you're seeing here is not going to be the correct one for that paper. So I'm going to get it to rear feed, which I always do for label paper, and then I'm choosing for a glossy setting, but normally I would choose coated paper. So here's one of the labels that I have printed out, and I was debating just cutting this down to a little rectangle and sticking it on, or covering the whole thing. So I left myself enough room to cover the whole thing, and that is what I did for this one. So it is quite seamless. I kind of want to try just cutting it out in a rectangle and see if I like that better. So I'm just going to carefully peel off the backing. You kind of get one shot at it. I'm going to put it on as straight as I can, try and get it in the center. So you can just lightly see the line, the difference between the white and the label paper. Not bad at all, and probably not something that most people would notice. The reason why I cut it full size originally is because all I could find was my glossy label paper, and I couldn't find my matte finish one. So the matte one definitely blends in a lot better. I ended up switching the settings on my printer to print on the matte paper. I think I'm gonna trim this one down as well and then put that on my last little pick here. Now I have my journaling here, and I had the perfectly measured space for it. I did it on the same matte, Avery matte label paper. I'll make sure to link that down below. But I had a perfectly measured space for it here, and I thought I had put this back where I wanted it. And then I forgot that when I put this on, I overlapped the bottom and used up the little bit of extra space that I had. So I need to either reprint this or edit it. And I hate having to reprint. So we're just going to clip off the last sentence, and hopefully we can make this work in that space. Okay, I'm going to have to put this on pretty much perfectly, and I need to move it over. There we go. Made it work. All right, next let's move on to the embellishment clusters. I want to have pots here. I want to have something up here and here. And I also feel like I need something here. So in the sketch, the embellishments are over here, here, and here. But I felt like this is the perfect opportunity to put in pots and greenery right there. So I'm thinking maybe a smaller little something like a tag or something like that up here. Let's start with a little bit of ink blending, and then I can place and play with everything because I think I do want to add some shading. So I'm actually going to bring in, this is a gel plate, a really old one, and it's actually not a very good one. It's actually more of a giant acrylic stamp. So it's kind of the same material as a photopolymer stamp, which means that I can get my papers to stick to it, and it's great for ink blending on small pieces. I'm going to bring in Pecan Pie, which is the same brown that is on here. I think I'm going to add my shading all on the bottom and right hand side. I have a piece of scrap paper here that I'm just going to use to tap off on so that I don't get too carried away. I want to start out gently first, and then I can always intensify. Okay, that got intense real quick. I did not wipe off enough. I forgot that I just re-inked this pad the other day. Okay, if I'm adding these little saucers to the bottom, I need to add some shading to the bottom. All right, now I think I'm gonna have one that I want on its side. I think maybe over there. So I'm going to do it along the other side because I would want the darkest part to be towards the ground. I think that makes sense. All right. I think those actually look really good. I'm happy with that. I'm gonna bring in the Granny Apple Green, and I'm gonna bring out all of my Granny Apple greenery. So same thing, I'm going to put my brush in, tap it off, and I'm going to keep this through the center, I think, and just come out onto the leaves a little bit. Just going for a little bit of shading and variation. It gives dimension to the leaves without having to do a bunch of shaping. You could definitely do that if you wanted to. I did a few more pieces out of the garden green cardstock, and I used garden green ink to ink blend on that. Just a couple of smaller leaves and a couple of these larger ones. It just gives that same shaded look. And I did some of these leaves. These are cut on the dark side of Granny Apple Green cardstock and the light side. So I think you can probably see a little bit of difference between those two. It's one of the reasons that I love double-sided cardstock or two-tone cardstock. It has a light tone on one side and a dark tone on the other. Same with this garden green color. There is a light on the back side and then the true color on the other. I'm going to get my pots situated first since they are the focal point of my clusters. I have my cluster of 2 over here, then I'm going to do 1 on this side and then 1 at the top. I don't have enough room to let it sit above my photo mat, so I'm going to tuck it underneath there, and I think that will end up looking okay. Now I can bring in my greenery and start tucking those into the pots. I want to get them kind of arranged before I start gluing things into place. And I just have to be careful at the top here that the greenery doesn't go past the edge of my page. I'm adding some flowers onto there as well, just to fill this out and add a little bit of color. I do want that cluster at the top to be a little bit wider, so I will be looking for another option of something to add to that. There's not really any wrong way to do this. I just want to kind of mix in the greenery with the different shades, having like a lighter and a darker, or even the 2 tones of the same green, the lighter side and the darker side, and just fill out these pots, make them look nice and full and fluffy. And then of course my little bird watching pic there. I gotta make sure I don't cover the little bird in the photo that she's looking at. I want it close to where the bird is, but not covering it. So I kind of have to wiggle it around and find the exact right spot where I can read it and also still see the bird, otherwise that ruins the whole point. Since that bird is so hard to see, I'm going to bring in this little white acrylic arrow. It's dimensional, but it's white so it doesn't stand out too much, just enough to point at the bird, and hopefully we will notice that when we're looking back at the pages. That cluster is pretty much done, I think, now that I added a few flowers, and I'm going to work on this other one, adding more greenery to my pot, making sure it's not covering up too much of my photo. I do like it when I have greenery that kind of spills over and comes over the photos a little bit. It makes everything feel connected and like it belongs together on the page. Nothing is just out there floating in space. Now I'm going to bring in some flowers. I have some on the side here. I really like how that looks so that the sides of the pots don't just look plain. And then some on top as well. And then my other little pick here. And that's really kind of bringing everything together. I'm going to bring in a couple of ephemera pieces. I was looking for some things to add to this page, and I love this ephemera because it's like a thick cardstock. It's also adhesive on the back. So I'm thinking tucking that under there, and this matches the pinks in here perfectly. So this would let me extend this little cluster and make it longer like I was wanting to do. Something like that. This ephemera pack is really good. It has some really good just sayings on here. The colors match perfectly, so I could bring in more of these if I wanted to. But I think this will be good for what I wanted. Let's see if I have enough space. I think I do. Now typically I'd go for 2 tags, but I don't want to use up both of my tags. So I'm thinking 1 tag with some of that greenery, and then our little pick here, kind of like that. I love how this is looking. I'll just need to tweak things a little bit as I stick it down, but I think this is good. So I'm just going to grab my glue and then go ahead and start adhering everything. I am loving how this is coming together, and we are just missing one kind of final detail, and that is the title. So I did a combination of basic cuts and print then cut for my title. And I'm going to want to do some ink blending, I think. I couldn't decide on what color to do it, so I think I want this to remain white. Spell out backyard adventure. So the word adventure I did in my usual scripty font, and I did a print then cut with a really small offset around it. And this is going to fit on the bottom. And then backyard, I cut out of a really blocky font. I'll put the name of both below. If you watch my videos regularly, then you recognize this. This is the Andalusia font that I got from Creative Fabrica, I believe, and I will leave both down below. So I was thinking if I blend brown, probably the same Pecan Pie brown, and just kind of do it very lightly all over and then darken it up at the bottom, and then maybe even add some little like black dirt marks. These little details can be a lot of fun to add, and they can really be that finishing touch that just brings everything together. So I'm going very lightly all over. I'm smooshing this off on my scrap paper first, and then starting at the bottom just in case I got it a little bit heavier than I intended it. But I basically want a very light brown all over. I do want it brown though so that it stands out from the offset. Now I'm going to start out from the bottom, and I think I want to bring the darker brown about halfway up. I'm going to stick all with the same color brown because I want it to be in the same tone. The crumb cake brown has a lot more kind of like green undertone to it. It's a more yellowy or greeny, and I don't really like the way it mixes with the pecan pie. This does not need to be exact at all. We can definitely have some variation because we're basically making it look like dirt. So it's okay if it is not completely matching. So the coordinating stamp set, the Help Me Grow set, has this little dirt, kind of speckly dirt image. And I think I want to use that on my letters. Hopefully that's going to give me the look that I want. I'm going to zoom in closer here so you can see what I'm doing. And so my head is not just in the way the entire time. Look how that title came together. I just have to show you the angle on there because I did take time to cut up my dimensionals into teeny tiny little strips and pop up the word adventure. I think it just really makes the title. I put these ones down flat. I did debate popping those, but I'm glad I went with the word adventure. Love how the inking and the stamping came out. And then this is just going to go down flat right there. I feel like I want to add something right there, and I had a couple of leftover leaves. So I'm just going to tuck these under here somehow. Just adds that little pop of green and ties it into the page, I think, just a little bit better. Now the last thing I'm going to do is I want to put a little something in the center of those flowers. I have this, I believe it's retired, the Pearlized Enamel Effects. Perfect. Liquid pearls, if you have those from Ranger, very similar. It's just like a metallic paint with a fine tip on it. And I'm gonna have to be very careful with this because I need to add very little dots. And if you don't want to have the little Hershey Kiss tops on them, the best way to get rid of that is to kind of tap the back of the paper after you've applied them, and they will settle down and not be quite so pointy on top. I'm barely using any pressure. I'm trying to get very little product out. These will need to sit and dry for a little while, but it's my last step on this layout, so that's fine. I can let it sit and dry. My pearls aren't quite dry, but I want to give you a close-up of how everything looks. You can see that shine coming off those pearls and all the inking. My little arrow there. I'm so happy with how this came together, especially that title. If you want some more details on how to create these kind of titles with your Cricut, I have a video that's all about titles called 12 Ways to Make the Perfect Scrapbook Title, and there are tutorials in there as well as artwork. So you want to make sure you check that out. I hope you got some good ideas for this sketch. And you're not going to want to miss all the other Creative Design Team videos. I will link to the playlist so that you can go get inspiration for that new book. And remember, you can find all of our sketchbooks at cdtcreatives.com. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon with another video.